welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling the AmiBroker Formula Editor with you.
Yeah.
It sounds like, our audience is ready to move beyond the basics.
Yeah.
Writing solid code, dodging those frustrating errors,
Absolutely.
and setting up their workspace fin and extract the most valuable nuggets.
We'll be uncovering those hidden settings and sharing tips that even seasoned AmiBroker users might not know.
Okay.
Think of this as leveling up your coding game.
I love that. Okay, let's start with optimizing your formula editor setup.
Okay.
It's like prepping your kitchen before a big cooking session. Having the right tools and setup makes everything smoother and more enjoyable.
Exactly. And one of the most overlooked tools is something seemingly basic line numbers.
Okay.
They're essential for efficient debugging, especially when working with complex formulas. Imagine trying to find a specific error in a sea of code without line numbers. It would be a nightmare.
It'd be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Exactly.
Okay, so line numbers check. What else can we do to make our coding lives easier?
Now let's talk about the fold margin.
Okay.
This is a real game changer for anyone working with lengthy formulas. It lets you collapse sections of code. You're not currently working on reducing visual clutter and making it easier to focus.
So it's like decluttering your digital workspace. I like it.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. And while we're on the topic of keeping things neat and tidy, what about that selection margin I see in your notes?
This one is more about aesthetics and visual clarity. Think of it as a subtle visual guide that helps you quickly see what code you've selected. It just makes things feel more organized, which can be surprisingly helpful when you're staring at code for hours.
Right. It's all about reducing that mental fatigue. Okay. I'm already feeling more zen just thinking about how organized my AmiBroker workspace is going to be, what other hidden gems are lurking in the settings menu.
Let's talk about autocomplete. It's a feature that suggests code as you type, and it can be a real time saver. AmiBroker offers two options, immediate and on demand.
Okay.
Immediate is great for beginners because it shows you all the available options as you type, kind of like a helpful guide.
Okay. Instant gratification. I'm guessing there's a time and place for that.
Right. As you become more fluent in AmiBroker's language, you might find on demand less distracting.
Gotcha.
It only shows suggestions when you press a specific key combination, giving you more control.
So you're saying it's like choosing between training wheels and going full speed ahead.
Exactly. Now, while we're on the topic of customization, let's talk about appearances. Something as simple as increasing the font size can make a huge difference, especially if you're working on a smaller screen like a phone.
Oh, absolutely. Eye strain is the enemy of productivity.
Yeah.
What about those color settings? I see you've got some notes about making the code more visually appealing.
This is where you can get really creative and tailor your editor to your visual preferences. Imagine being able to instantly distinguish between built-in functions, strings, and numbers just by their color.
Okay.
It can make your code much easier to read and debug, for example. You could set built-in functions to bold blue strings to green and numbers to red.
So you're basically turning your code into a color-coded masterpiece.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm loving these customization options.
Yeah.
It's like giving your AmiBroker workspace a personality makeover. But you know what else needs a makeover?
What's that?
My formula library.
Okay.
It's a total mess right now. Formulas scattered everywhere with no rhyme or reason.
Ah, yes, the dreaded formula jungle.
Yes.
It can quickly become overwhelming, especially if you've downloaded or written a lot of formulas. The key to taming this beast is to create custom folders within an AmiBroker.
Okay, so it's like creating a filing system for my code, but how granular should I get with these folders?
Think about the different types of trading systems or analysis techniques you're working with. You could have a folder for trend-following strategies, another for mean reversion systems, and maybe even one labeled My Crazy Ideas.
I'd love that so I could have a folder for all those experimental formulas I'm too scared to delete.
Exactly.
But seriously, this folder system sounds like a game changer for anyone who wants to actually find and reuse their formulas.
It is. Now that we've got your workspace looking sharp, it's time to face the music. Code errors.
Yeah.
They're inevitable, especially when you're starting out with AmiBroker's formula language.
Ugh, code errors the bane of my existence.
Everyone makes them.
Right. Hopefully by understanding the most common ones, we can avoid some of those late-night debugging sessions.
Exactly. And before we dive into specific errors, it's crucial to understand the different parameter types AmiBroker uses, string numeric and built-in.
Gotcha.
Think of these as the building blocks of your code.
Okay, so it's like making sure you're using the right ingredients in a recipe?
Precisely, a string is simply text enclosed in double quotes, like a stock symbol or a strategy name.
Okay.
Numeric parameters represent numbers like moving average lengths or price levels, and built-in parameters refer to specific AmiBroker functions in keywords like buy or sell.
So it's all about speaking the language of AmiBroker now. What kind of trouble can we get into if we mix up these parameter types?
One of the most common errors, especially for beginners, is forgetting those double quotes when working with strings. AmiBroker needs those double quotes to differentiate between text and variables.
All right, it's that classic double quote gotcha that trips up everyone at some point. Okay, so we need to be mindful of those double quotes. What other coding traps should we be aware of?
Another common pitfall is referencing data from previous periods incorrectly.
Okay.
This can be tricky because it involves understanding how AmiBroker handles time, for instance. You might think you're comparing today's closing price to yesterday's closing price, but without the proper syntax, AmiBroker might be comparing apples to oranges.
So it's like a time warp where AmiBroker is getting its dates mixed up? That sounds dangerous.
It can definitely lead to unexpected results in your backtests.
Gotcha.
And speaking of backtests, another common error is forgetting to account for stock splits and dividends. These corporate actions can significantly impact a stock's price. And if your code isn't adjusted for them, your backtest results can be misleading.
It's like having a hidden variable that's skewing your whole experiment.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see how even small coding errors can have big consequences.
Absolutely. And one of the trickiest errors to spot is when your buy and sell signals are exact opposites.
Okay.
This can lead to the bizarre situation of buying and selling the same stock on the same day, essentially trading against yourself.
Wait, so my code can be so messed up that I'm basically my own worst enemy. That's terrifying. Is there any way to spot this error before I accidentally blow up my trading account?
Luckily, AmiBroker has a visual aid that can help you catch this error, the arrows feature.
Okay.
When you enable this, AmiBroker will display arrows on your price chart, showing where your code is generating buy and sell signals. If you see buy and sell arrows appearing at the same point, you've got this exactly opposite condition issue.
So it's like a visual warning system flashing red lights to say, hey,
Okay.
something's not right here.
Yeah.
That's incredibly helpful. Now, I know we've thrown a lot of errors at you, but don't worry, we'll walk you through specific code examples and show you exactly how to fix each one. It's like a coding surgery, but without the messy blood and guts.
Exactly. But before we get to the solutions, I want to touch on a common misconception about backtesting. Many beginners think they need to test their strategies over decades of data to get meaningful results.
Right. It's like the longer the backtest, the better, or is it?
Not necessarily, especially when you're starting out. It's more effective to backtest over a shorter, more recent period.
Okay.
This helps you avoid overfitting your code to a specific historical period, which can lead to strategies that perform poorly in real time.
Overfitting sounds like a bad thing.
Yeah.
Can you give us an analogy to help us understand it?
Imagine you're training for a marathon by running only on a perfectly flat track. You might set amazing times, but come race day when you face hills and wind, you'll struggle.
Ooh.
The same applies to backtesting if you only test your strategies on a specific historical period. You're not preparing them for the unpredictable nature of real markets.
So it's like building a house of cards that collapses at the first sign of trouble.
Okay.
Shorter and recent backtests. Got it. What other backtesting best practices should we keep in mind?
Using AmiBroker's watchlist feature is crucial.
Okay.
This lets you focus your backtests on specific groups of stocks that align with your trading goals. Instead of testing your strategies on thousands of random stocks, you can create a watch list of, say, high-growth technology stocks or value stocks with strong dividends.
Okay, so it's about narrowing down your testing universe to something more manageable and relevant. Now, what about that excluded filter I see mentioned in some of the guides? Is that a good tool for beginners?
While it can be helpful in certain situations, I'd caution beginners against overusing it. It can create a sort of confirmation bias where you're only testing your strategies on stocks that you already believe will perform well, which isn't a true reflection of how your strategies would work in the wild.
It's like cherry-picking your data to support your preconceived notions. So focused watch list, not excessive exclusions. Good advice. What other backtesting tips can you share?
Don't fall into the trap of thinking there's one right way to backtest. It's an iterative process.
Okay.
Start with a shorter period, refine your strategies, and then gradually expand your testing time frame as you gain confidence.
So it's all about testing, learning, and adapting.
Yeah.
I like that. Now I'm really curious to see how we can actually fix those code errors we discussed earlier. Are you ready to get your hands dirty and show us some real-world examples?
Let's get hands-on and fix those errors we've been discussing. It's time for some live coding surgery.
Okay.
First up, that pesky missing semicolon.
Ah, yes. The semicolon, that tiny little punctuation mark that can bring your entire AmiBroker formula to a screeching halt.
Exactly, remember. AmiBroker relies on semicolons to know where one statement ends and another begins without them. It's like trying to read a sentence without any periods or commas. It just becomes a jumbled mess.
It's one of those things that seems so small but can cause a world of frustration. So let's see this semicolon surgery in action.
All right, let's bring up that first code example. As you can see, we're getting a syntax error on line 4.
Okay.
And if we look closely at line 3, we can see that it's missing a semicolon at the end.
There it is. It's like that feeling when you get to the end of a paragraph and realize you forgot to put a period.
Exactly. So to fix this error, we simply add that missing semicolon at the end of line 3. It's a small change, but it makes all the difference in the world to AmiBroker.
Semicolon successfully implanted. Okay. What's the next patient on our operating table?
Next up, we have that set option function and the importance of using double quotes when working with strings.
Right.
Remember, AmiBroker needs those double quotes to differentiate between text and variables.
Right. It's like putting air quotes around a word to emphasize its meaning.
Exactly. So let's look at the code. We can see that the parameter name, max open positions, is missing those crucial double quotes.
I see it. It's like it's trying to blend in with the other code, but those double quotes will make it stand out as a string.
Precisely. So we simply add those double quotes around the parameter name like this, and poof, the error vanishes. AmiBroker can now clearly see that it's dealing with a string.
It's amazing how such a small tweak can have such a big impact. Now, what about that optimize function with the missing step argument?
Let's bring up that snippet of code here. We have the optimize function, but it's like a car without a gas pedal.
Yeah.
It's missing that crucial step argument to tell it how far to go.
So without that step argument, the optimization is going to be stuck in idle.
Exactly. It will run, but it might not explore the full range of values we want it to test.
Gotcha.
So we need to specify the step argument, which tells AmiBroker how much to increment the value being optimized during each run. In this case, use a step size of 50, giving it a good range to work with.
Okay, we've given our optimization function a boost. What other coding calamities can we fix today?
Let's tackle that error message about a variable being used without being initialized. Remember, it's like trying to use an empty container. You need to put something in it first.
Right, we need to give that variable a starting point so AmiBroker knows what to do with it.
Exactly. In this example, we're trying to use a variable called buy condition in our buy signal, but we haven't given it an initial value, so we'll set it to false at the start.
Okay.
Just like that.
So it's like setting the default to don't buy until our conditions are met. What's next on our coding cleanup list?
Let's look at that error involving the wrong variable name.
Okay.
It's a simple typo, but it can cause AmiBroker to get very confused. In this case, the code is referencing a variable called short moving average, but it's actually defined as just moving average in AmiBroker.
It's like calling your dog by the wrong name. They might tilt their head in confusion.
Exactly. So we simply correct the variable name to match exactly how it's defined in AmiBroker. Attention to detail is crucial when it comes to coding.
Got it. Precision is key. What other surgical skills do we need to master today?
Let's address that missing code for handling stock splits and dividends. Remember, if our code doesn't adjust for these corporate actions, our backtest results could be way off.
Right. It's like measuring ingredients without taking into account the size of your measuring cups. You might end up with a very different outcome than you expected.
Exactly. So we'll use AmiBroker's built-in functions to adjust the historical prices for stock splits and dividends. It's like having a time machine that can go back and make sure the prices are accurate.
So we're rewriting history to get a more accurate view of how our strategies would have performed clever. Now, what about that error where we were assigning a value to a buy condition instead of a logical condition?
Remember, a buy condition needs to be a yes or no question that AmiBroker can evaluate.
Right.
In this case, we were accidentally giving it a number instead of a question.
Okay.
So we need to rephrase it using a logical operator like greater than or less than to create a statement that AmiBroker can assess.
Right. We need to speak AmiBroker's language now for our final act of coding wizardry. Can you show us how to use the arrows feature to fix those pesky buy and sell signals that we're firing at the same time?
Absolutely. Let's enable the arrows feature and run a backtest with the buggy code. As you can see, we're getting buy and sell arrows popping up at the same time, which means our strategy is basically buying and selling the same stocks simultaneously.
It's like trying to run in two directions at once. You're not going to get very far.
Exactly. To fix this, we need to make sure our buy and sell conditions are logically consistent. We need to tweak the sell condition so that it's not the exact opposite of the buy condition.
So we're giving our strategy a sense of direction, making sure it's not working against itself. Now let's see the results.
Okay, we've made the adjustments, and now when we run the backtest, we can see that the buy and sell arrows are no longer overlapping. Our strategy now has a clear path.
Success. We've debugged all the code, and our AmiBroker strategies are finally ready to conquer the markets.
Well, hold on a minute. While we've addressed these specific errors, it's crucial to remember that testing is an ongoing process. Even the most experienced coders can miss things. So always test thoroughly, try different settings, and be prepared to make adjustments along the way.
Right. It's all about continuous improvement. And I think that's a great note to wrap up on.
Yeah.
We've covered a ton of ground today, from optimizing your formula editor to dissecting common coding errors and mastering backtesting best practices. But the real journey begins now, taking what you've learned and using it to develop your own unique trading strategies.
Exactly. The world of algorithmic trading is vast and constantly evolving. Embrace the challenge, experiment, and most importantly, have fun.
That's right. Don't be afraid to get creative and think outside the box. And who knows, you might just discover the next big trading breakthrough. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AmiBroker.